It's time for the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games at Southern Utah University in Cedar City. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of a Utah sports tradition at utahsummergames.org. Participate in over 50 sports around the state. Then plan to join the opening ceremonies Friday, June 5th, presented by State Bank of Southern Utah. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games. Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
What is today?
Today is Thursday.
What? Is that today?
Rise and shine.
No.
Gotta get up.
Gotta get up.
Rise and shine.
Wake up! Wake up!
Also, it is Thursday.
Gotta get up.
Rise and shine. You're not the boss of me!
Okay, the show's about to start. Let's get ready.
It's showtime.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning. The NFL draft starts tonight. We're going to get to that. But we begin with Real Salt Lake. They had their chances. A couple of really good ones early on. But Serge Solans could not get the header on frame, and then when they did score, Gila Vogi's goal was waved off because Solans was offside. So they squandered those opportunities. Gozo had a good one later, but he sent it wide, and sure enough, Miami scored two late goals in the 82nd, 84th minute, and they win. Messi didn't score. Messi didn't have an assist, but Miami gets the win, and that Luis Suarez goal was spectacular. Here's Pablo Mastroeni after RSL loses at home for the first time this year. Pablo, the first 10 minutes, there were a couple of great chances, a goal called back, and it looked like when RSL couldn't convert on those that Miami got control of the game and really didn't give it up. It seemed like an uphill battle after that.
Yeah, I think in particular the first half, I think we didn't do a good job when we reset with Hoffa. The tempo of the game was really slow, and we ended up stitching ourselves and going long more than we'd like. And I think at halftime we kind of fixed that, and the start of the second half I thought was much better to get on top of the game and create some good chances in the second half. But I think, again, the biggest, and this is what I told the guys, and having played in big games, is you got to take your chances. It's a game of opportunities and converting. It's not, you're not going to get 30 chances. I thought their center backs were huge tonight, monsters. The best I've seen them play in all the games I've seen. So on top of that, you've got to be extra sharp, and we just weren't. But I think it was a good test for us, and obviously, having Messi on the field, regardless of what you think, I think it's synonymous with, having Pele back in the NASL. The people are, this guy's been hanging on these players' walls for years, and just being on the same field, I felt like we were a little bit off, but I think a lot of that comes with nerves and the stage that, the type of attention that this team brings. And so, but again, I think if we capitalize on that goal and that goal stood, I think the game changes, right? And then now they have to come out and, but they're an experienced team, and the two goals they scored were world class, and you got, what are you going to do? You got to just, the only way I know to deal with that is to take your chances and change the momentum a bit.
Also, it looked like their midfield did a great job of controlling the ball. That isn't a problem that you've had a lot this year, and this was different. And with their pivots especially, was that because you had to pay more attention to Messi and it created more space, or what was going on there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think the way Messi plays and his interpretation of space is the best in the world, and hence the reason why he doesn't have to defend a lot. Because you always have to have essentially two players on that weak side aware of where he's at, and that takes away from getting really good pressure on the ball. In the first half as well, I think our 210s, we weren't defending the weak side half space as much, or well. And I think in the second half when we did that, we were able to win balls and then control the game in the second half a bit more. So, but again, when guys like Messi, DePaul, these guys, they have a +1 factor to their game, and that's what makes them really difficult. Is again, they don't need a lot of opportunities tonight. They had a few, but when they take their chances, they're a tough team to beat.
There's still a lot of emotion and energy out there. What do you have to say and do to get these guys to bounce back? Because playing a Western opponent, 6-point swing in the standings, all that kind of stuff, that game Sunday with the Galaxy comes fast, and it's obviously important.
Yeah, no, I think, like I've said all year, nothing's changed. The mindset and the character of this group is elite. I think the most important thing is that we recover. Again, not having played those games, we were having those bye weeks, didn't allow us to, I think, really build into the type of fitness that you need to be sharp in multiple games. So I think going now, it's really important that we put a fresher group out there, and so a lot of that's going to be dependent on how the guys recover. Diego Luna today took an IV before the game, took an IV at halftime. He had fever this afternoon, right? And so, and Engel pops out at pregame. So for me, it's making sure that the guys stay healthy, that the guys are fit, so that we can play the way that we'd like. So we'll see how the guys recover tomorrow, and then we'll make decisions for the weekend. But as far as the mentality to bounce back, there's no doubt that we'll be ready for the game. And then, again, it's just taking the lessons that we've learned from our previous 7 games as to how we find a result in LA.
You mentioned kind of the uniqueness of Miami coming to town, the nerves, the attention, all that. Mm-hmm. Could you sense any of that in the crowd tonight, in the atmosphere around the game when there was a big Miami moment? A larger part of the crowd would cheer than any other away team. Yeah. Do you think that influenced the game at all?
No, I don't think it did. I think the guys, when they go to bed the night before the game and they're thinking about, the stage that they're going to play on, I think has more impact. And listen, I played in big games with players that I had on my walls too, and it's a real effect. And sometimes that takes away from what you need to do. I think, like I said, first half we were a bit sloppy with it, and some of the decisions in the final third early on, I think weren't characteristic of the way we've been playing. But again, those all these little factors play into that, and I think in the second half we got the game under control a bit more, created some decent chances, and again, you're not going to, especially with the way the center backs play tonight, is you're not going to get a full chance. You got to turn a half chance into a goal, and I think Serge had a couple at the top of the box. Luna had a couple, so I think all those things we have to be on to be able to be a team that takes a goal basically from nothing on a set piece, but he puts it in the upper corner, and Luis Suarez does the same thing.
You mentioned last game wanting more energy from the guys off the bench. Mm-hmm. What was kind of the strategy tonight with the substitutions, and did you see any more of that tonight?
Well, again, I think the substitution with Juanma was really, again, thinking about moving forward. He's been a bit sick as well, and getting him 30 minutes. Alex has done a great job in his performances, and so again, just kind of looking forward with that decision. And then Vic, just hopefully, again, he's got a real knack in and around the box, and so. And Sergi's been, first half in particular, he's running the channels a lot. And so just freshening it up from that perspective. And before they scored their second goal, we were going to a bit of a different shape with 3 10s, and Aiden Herzakani coming to the game. As far as the energy was good, but the game, they did a great job of killing the game, right? They just sat around, they took their time, and used some experience to really close out the game. So it was really difficult to kind of gauge, but I think these again, like I said earlier, I think these are really important learning moments. If you want to be great, that's what you're up against. It's not easy. Good is one thing, and we always talk about the enemy of great is good. So we got to get one game better for the weekend.
Thank you,
Maddie, and then Sean.
Hey, Pablo.
Hey,
at 0-0, as the match got later and later, which is usually when RSL can impose their will on an opponent at altitude, did you feel like the next goal was going to prove decisive?
Yes, I think. I think that the corner that they had, I think, was. It kind of came out of the run of play where I thought we had a lot of good pressure in the second half, and the field tilt was in our favor, and really didn't think, that, and we've been defending set pieces quite well, so that wasn't really a thought of mine. I thought we were going to find the goal. I really did. I think Diego Luna picked up his game in the second half. Morgan was active. Gozo got a bit more involved. And I just felt it was coming. As far as whether or not it was going to be decisive, the problem with Miami when they take the lead is that you can get a lot of the ball in their final third, but then they have the best player in the world, and he's going to unlock teams when you're stretched. And so the idea was to score the first goal and then ask some real questions.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Sean?
Just building off what you were talking about there, it did seem like there were kind of some nerves playing in there from some young players and everything in particular. Is there an advantage to kind of seeing that early in the season so you can kind of go back on the tape and sort of, and I don't know, maybe you take kind of some of those young guys aside now and go, hey, this is how this moment was affecting you and kind of how you can change it?
Yeah, I think when I think experience understands the times that we can control the game with the ball, and I think too often we were going forward when there wasn't anything there, and so when we kept the ball, we oftentimes went back to Hoffa, but it was really slow and lethargic. And against a team like Miami, the secret sauce is tempo. You got to move the ball with tempo, and it was almost like we were allowing them to set up to then break them down, which left us pinned in the wide channels, and then Serge running the channels. So for us, I think it's these type of moments not so much for the young players, but as a collective, is understanding that our game is tempo at all. We want tempo, and there's going to be times where Hoffa steps on it, but against a team like Miami, where they're willing to, if you show the impetus to move the ball quick and rotate their defensive shape, you can get to the next layer quicker, right? And I think we were just so slow, and in doing so, they got a lot of success from it. And what ends up happening on the field is when pivots aren't on the ball a lot, they stop moving for the ball, and they're now playing for seconds. And so I think a good learning moment for us is we want to play with tempo, especially when the game is static like that. And I think in the second half we came out and did a really good job of that to get control of the game again. But I think we got to understand that we might not have a second half where it's 0-0. We've got to do it from the start. So I think it's good learning for all of us. Yeah.
Hey, Pablo, obviously we saw Lucas Engel pick up a slight knock. You want to explain exactly what happened and his status in regards to that?
Yeah, he felt something yesterday, did some testing this morning. He kind of passed that test this morning. But again, I think, and this goes back to the output the group put forth against San Diego, not having had successive games to kind of build up that type of fitness and the muscular fitness that you need to be able to go in a 3-game week. And in warm-ups, the guys came in and let me know that he's out, and so we had a quick move. And but I think Sam Junkwa probably played his best game in an RSL jersey. I thought he was a beast, a monster. His decisions were great with the ball, without the ball. And again, I think this is really credit to the group that we have, that guys can step in and have those type of performances on a second's notice. So he had a fantastic game.
You mentioned Sam, but obviously having no Lucas and now PQ being injured still, does that scare you in terms of depth at all? Or?
Yeah, no, it's a concern for sure. Kobe Henry's just now trained with us for about a week. He's and when Dre went down, I thought it was going to be too much time for Kobe's putting him back into a danger zone as far as minutes are concerned. So it's something that we've talked about right after the game and in lieu of this next game. So it is a concern.
Krishan.
Pablo, what do you hope fans attending their first RSL match or opposing fans tonight learned about your team, especially your own young stars?
Yeah. Well, I would say that I think for 70, whatever it was, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, the guys competed incredibly well. I think, being in the presence of a guy like Messi will take a layman fan into a true soccer fan when you get to experience the environment. I thought the crowd tonight was exceptional, and just waiting to explode on a goal, and I think it's obviously the first time we've been shut out at home, which is usually not the case. And so what I'd say is the guys are going to bounce back. We have some amazing younger players. We have an amazing team, and we have an amazing fan base. And I think when you have all those, it's a spectacle every weekend.
Go ahead, Trevor.
Hey, Pablo. You've talked in the past about this team kind of being a team built to attack, and kind of the idea is you guys are just going to score goals. Tonight, obviously, that didn't happen. Is it kind of, I don't really know how to ask this properly, but is it kind of expected that sometimes the ball just won't roll your way? Is that part of the plan for the team, where sometimes you guys just won't score? Or did something go wrong today?
No, nothing went wrong other than I think at the end of the day, we're all human beings, so we have an identity, we have a way we want to play, and there's moments that at times are a bit big. I think we were, like I said earlier, I think we were a bit nervous in that final third. We weren't decisive as we've been. A lot of that plays into the players that they have. The moment, all the badges everyone's wearing in here, there's a change. It's not like a normal game, and so I would say there's a couple reasons for that, but I think the biggest thing is the opponent that we played, and like I said earlier, their two center backs played the best game I've seen in 2026, and they were monsters. And so what worked for the front three last game had to be double that. And we just weren't as crisp and as sharp in that final third phase as we needed to be to score a goal.
There's Pablo Mastroeni. RSL's back in action Sunday, 5 o'clock at the LA Galaxy, and we'll have that one for you here on 97.5 The Zone. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Evan Brennan, player agent on the NFL draft, and some things you're looking for and some things the NFL is looking for. That's next.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 KSL Sports Zone. Evan Brennan joined us yesterday in the 8 o'clock hour to look ahead to the NFL Draft, which starts tonight in Pittsburgh. Here is Evan Brennan, who'd already been on the phone long before he started chatting with us.
I'll put it this way. It's 8:06, and I have had at least 10 calls from NFL teams this morning alone.
Wow. All right.
What do they want to know?
Well, a lot of them are trying to figure out where some of these guys are going to go. They're starting to target guys that they may want to grab after the draft and undrafted free agency, all kinds of stuff. Find out last-minute, tidbits about guys. It depends. There's all kinds of stuff. So smoke and mirrors, investigation, who knows? It's a wild deal.
The old cliche about the undrafted guys, you'd rather be undrafted so you can pick your landing spot as opposed to being drafted in the 7th round, or that's just what you say when you're not drafted, you'd rather be drafted. How do your clients feel, and if you advise them on how they should feel, what do you say?
That is the number one question I get by everyone in this. Here's my answer. There is some merit to being able to go where you want, and if you are a very top undrafted free agent, undrafted, you will get more guaranteed money than a 7th-round pick. That's very, very true. However, the metrics do show that if teams make a draft investment in you, there is a higher chance that you'll make a practice squad or maybe even the team, given that the team has done that kind of investment. It comes down to if teams are drafting for best available or need. And so it can kind of go both ways. I tell guys, you always want to get drafted. It helps you down the road. If you get cut, teams are more willing to bring in a guy that was a draft pick versus somebody else by a slight margin. But if you don't, having a backup plan on, the best destination for you and a really, really good comp plan with a signing bonus and paragraph 5 guarantee is good too. So the way I do it personally with my clients, we have a couple teams picked out. If you don't get picked, we try to talk to those teams, say, hey, would you guys be interested if this guy falls through? And we kind of have that destination. And if some other teams outside of that small group of teams call, we try to say, hey, we think we've got a team picked out. If he goes undrafted, if you want him, you're going to have to draft him. And that's been effective in getting guys drafted that otherwise may not be.
Seems like we see this every year, us guys in the media, that when Saturday comes and the draft is over, then there's just a plethora of emails that will come our way from the local schools here, players XYZ 1 through 7 through 8, whatever it might be. They've signed with this school, this team, and I always look forward to that to see where these guys are going to go, because I can follow the draft and find out where they're going to go. And the only way we're going to find out, or not the only way, but the best way, is the sports information people just email you, put out group emails of where all these kids are going. And it makes me wonder, when you get to that point on Saturday afternoon, is that more frenzied compared to all the other times in the draft when there's all these guys who are undrafted and teams are trying to jockey to get these kids?
It's a wild time. So just to give the listeners kind of an idea, these teams call, hey, Evan, we like your center from Weber State. We want to offer him a signing bonus. We want to offer him a guarantee on his contract, a paragraph 5 guarantee. Here's what our depth chart looks like. Are you in? You got 1 minute to decide. It can go like that. And then you kind of get this handshake deal. We call it agreed terms. They send you the contract late that night. You look it over. As the agent, you sign your portion, and it goes back to the team. When the kid reports for rookie minicamp, either that week or the following week, he signs his portion. So what the sports information directors are calling us, late on Saturday night or whatever it may be. Hey, where's your guys going? And we let them know, and that's how it all breaks down. But yes, during the draft, trying to get a guy drafted is very frenzy. But after the draft, even more so. I plan on taking anywhere from 200 to 400 calls on Saturday.
Evan, we've had you on. I think we started having you on because you were representing several guys with local ties. Are you representing several guys with local ties for players across the state of Utah this year?
I am. I've got a kid that probably a lot of your listeners don't know, but they should, because he legitimately has got a real shot at getting drafted. A couple of teams have brought him in already. Gavin Ortega, the offensive lineman for Weber State, is a very large and very realistic sleeper to get drafted in this upcoming draft out of Weber State. So he's my guy locally that I'm working with.
Has NIL changed the draft? Because we've heard that it's changing the NBA in terms of guys maybe being second round, late first, and they want to stay in school and get the guaranteed money as opposed to risking it.
Yes, you are seeing a lot of guys trying to stick it out and, fight for another year. You're seeing people, try to use the courts to get another year because there's significant money in NIL. And so, when you're looking at kids coming out, one of the questions that you're asking is, are you done with college or are you not? Because if you're done with college, okay, let's proceed on how we're going to get you in the NFL. But if there's any chance that you want to come back, well, let's have that conversation on the front end rather than getting into January. And more and more players are trying to milk every day they can out of college because of the money. So, yes, in many ways it has changed my job.
Evan Brennan joining us, NFL Certified Contract Advisor, a.k.a. agent, at JL Sports Agency. Do you individually or does anyone in your agent represent college players in these NIL discussions? And if so, do you do it to kind of get the foot in the door to represent them at the NFL? We've heard lots of stories back in the day about NFL agents, but they've been certified for a while, and so a lot of the Wild West stories have dropped away. But we have heard the Wild West stories at the college level. So how is that working?
Yeah, so I work for JL Sports. We're a pretty well-known agency. This is actually my first year here. They brought me over, represent guys like Joe Flacco, Kyle Juszczyk, very well-respected agency. My personal practice is very heavy on the pro side, about 90%. I do some NIL work, and it's growing, but it's a minority of what I do. For most of the agents at our firm, it's the other way around, and there is significant money in NIL. We have one or two agents that all they do is NIL work, and we represent millions and millions of dollars on a yearly basis in NIL stuff. So at least at JL Sports at my firm, we have a very prominent presence in NIL. Me personally, it's a smaller one. I'm kind of the well-known pro guy that deals a lot on that side. But even like I said, I dabble in it with probably 2 or 3 players every single year. But it is a significant factor in the business and the money that can be made on the agent side.
And I'm wondering, as far as certification, from the NFL, it's regulated. How about there's no really regulating agency at the college level? Is there some guys that are maybe considered shady trying to represent these kids? Because unless I'm wrong, they don't have to go through a level of certification that you've had to do.
You're partially true. Yes, I carry the certified contractor license, one of the only ones, if not the only one in the state of Utah. I have to carry malpractice insurance. I undergo an FBI-level background check every single year. Now, individual states also regulate agents, including the state of Utah, and you have to submit to have a license on the state level. It's not very hard to get. It's just $500 or so, and you register with the Secretary of State. It's not heavily regulated. It could be, but it's not. But in theory, any agent in the NIL practicing in Utah and other states would have to register, even if they're not representing pro players, with the state of Utah. And in theory, if you fail to do that or not do it properly or violated the different provisions, you could face real issues. So to answer your question, no, there's not a formal test. No, there's not malpractice insurance that exists for NIL agents. But in theory, you should register with the Secretary of State, state by state, including Utah, which has athlete-agent laws that would apply to NIL agents.
Evan Brennan joining us, NFL Certified Contract Advisor at JL Sports Agency. How many guys from Utah schools do you think are going to get drafted? How much insight do you have into that?
Ooh, there's has to be over. BYU's probably got 2 guys. Utah's got a handful of guys, probably the same. I mentioned my guy at Weber State's got a real shot. There may be 1 guy at Utah State that's got an outside shot. So you do the math on that, somewhere between, 7 to 10 guys in the state that have got a realistic shot. But, the guy at BYU that I'm rooting for, I don't represent him, is Carson Ryan. Guys like Chase Roberts that I think have got a shot. I think Jack Kelly at BYU is probably going to go. You got Will Farron and guys like that. Utah's got, their high-end picks on the offensive line, defensive line that are, high-end guys that I think have got a real shot of, not just getting drafted, but going really high in the draft. So between all of that, like I said, 7 to 10.
The way this process works every year, it's always fascinated me. They've got at least 3 years likely of film on all these kids, right? Then they bring them back to the combine and they go through all that stuff. Then they go and do pro day workouts. So you got all this stuff. What matters more than other stuff in terms of evaluation? Because you got film of guys actually playing football than, as they say, guys running around in their underwear.
At the end of the day, the film is king, particularly for guys that are quote-unquote known entities, guys that went to the combine, guys from big schools. Film is king. The coaches a lot of times make these decisions, and they're watching film. However, for guys that are more off the beaten path, to get their film really noticed, they're going to have to run and jump really, really, really good. And that's how you kind of more or less kind of make yourself stand out as a quote-unquote traits player. So that's another question that I get a lot. If you're a very well-known, dominant player on tape at a big school, the tape's going to mean more. If you're not as dominant or you're at a smaller school, yeah, you're going to have to kind of get your shot and get more well-noticed on traits. And that's what you're seeing, like I said, with this Weber State kid. He's got good tape, but not a lot of people are going to look at it unless he tested really good, which he did, and that more or less got him on the board. So that's kind of how that works, and that's why you see guys at the combine from Alabama, from Ole Miss. They don't necessarily test very well, but get drafted really high is because they play really good football against NFL talent every single Saturday. And that's why you see really good players from small schools don't get picked, because their tape doesn't mean as much to teams because it's against lesser talent. They're going to have to test their way and have good tape. So hopefully that answers your question.
It seems inevitable, and it has seemed inevitable for probably 3 or 4 years now, that the NFL is going to go to 18 games. There's been some talk of players only playing 17 if they put in some kind of rule like that. But if they let him play 18, does getting on a practice squad become even more valuable? Does it just become inevitable that those guys will be rotated through and will get a shot?
Well, they expanded the practice squads a few years back. They used to only be 10. They're bigger, and part of that is just because the season keeps expanding. I mean, I tell guys, hey, if you're on a practice squad, there's a real chance you're going to get bumped up, particularly later in the year. And there's a lot of strategy teams use with how to manage their practice squad. But yes, the longer the seasons get, the more and more likely it is that teams are going to have to dip into their practice squad, and injuries will occur. It's just inevitable within football. Teams have to, make sure that they're in the best possible situation they can be every single Sunday. So yes, 100%. A lot more strategy is going to have to go on with how you manage your roster if the seasons do expand beyond where they currently sit. 100%.
I'm also fascinated by these 40 times, right? It's like a split second and even less than a second. And if you were able to get whatever it might be, that under the 4.5 or 4.5, whatever, it's like that's magic numbers, right? And then we go crazy on that. And then you got a kid like Puka Nacua who may not be a sprinter blazer, and he lasts until the 5th round, I think it was, and then he blows up. How do they reconcile that when they got these stopwatches? It's almost like, it's so vitally important, but yet if a kid isn't a big-time sprinter, that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a big-time player.
100%. And you look at the Rams, they've done a great job with what you would call slow receivers. Look at Cooper Kupp playing for those guys and lasting where he did in a very similar place to Puka Nacua. He did not run very well at the combine at all, and has proven to be a great player just like Puka. So some of it's an organizational thing that, hey, we're going to watch the tape, we're going to look at a lot of different things, and we're not going to put as much value on the speed. We trust the film more. We trust, what we're seeing in a lot of different arenas more. And so I think the Rams in particular have done a great job with slower receivers and trusting that tape. And I think you'll see some more teams emulate that. And there's some teams that now traits mean a lot to us. We have faith in our coaches to develop them, but it is, it's quite inconsistent, I would say, across the league, player to player. You'll see great players that aren't great testers. You'll see horrible players that are incredible testers. And that's just the kind of the fun and variance and variability of the league and the evaluation process.
Do agents get to have relationships with coaches, or is it more a GM personnel thing? And I ask that because we see someone like Harbaugh moving from Baltimore to New York. He's been in the league forever. There figures to be some turnover on that roster, maybe with a relationship if he knows what kind of players a certain agent likes and all that. Maybe they think there'd be a little more trust that it'll be a better fit for some of these end of the roster or jobs. Is there any angle to be played there as an agent?
Yeah, so to be totally candid with you, position coaches I deal with daily. I had coaches call me this morning from the NFL. Last night I dealt with the safeties coach. I talked to Vrabel yesterday about one of my guys. Head coaches less so much with undrafted guys. Where you deal a lot with head coaches with draft picks, guys that are legit mid-round or higher draft picks. Head coach will call you, hey, really like your guy, what are you hearing, and kind of feel you out on the market. General managers will do that too. Position coaches get heavily involved with late day 3 guys and undrafted guys, and a good relationship with a position coach can go a long way in getting a guy drafted or get a guy placed in undrafted free agency. They recognize the name. I was talking to an O-line coach for the team that I have, several players on the team. He knew my name. He called me up. Hey, we're looking at this guy. Love all the work you've done with all of our guys. Would love to, maybe get a deal done after the draft on this kid. What are you hearing on this guy? And it was an O-line coach just calling me. So, those relationships do matter. If you're kind of a repeat player, you develop those relationships, and teams kind of, like to deal with people they know versus random wild cards that could hurt them in the process just because they don't know who they are. If the players are, fungible, are kind of exactly the same. So, yes, for sure those things matter, particularly at the position coach level.
There's NFL player agent Evan Brennan. When we come back, the Utah Mammoth. Let's look ahead to Game 3 with Las Vegas. The Vegas Knights, baby. The Golden Knights. We'll do that next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, KSL Sports Zone. PK, big game Friday night. The Mammoth get their first taste of playoff victory. It's 1-1. And, the cool thing about the wins, they feel great, but also all it does, it just cranks up the expectations. All right, well, if they can get it in Vegas, then they can get it in Utah. And why can't they get 2 and be up 3-1? There's a real chance to advance here. Expectations are funny that way. It was a pretty satisfying win in Game 2, but I think it just builds the hype and builds the pressure for Game 3.
Yeah, but I don't think it has anything to do with the venue. I'm not impressed with the game, whether it be in Salt Lake or Timbuktu or Las Vegas. I think that the most important thing now is the narrative, as they say, is over about the youth and inexperience. I'm done with that. That doesn't matter. This team is not going to lose because they lack experience compared to some of the guys on the Golden Knights. They showed in Game 2, and then you can argue to a good extent, they showed in Game 1. Obviously, they didn't get that game. But in Game 2, they did. And they showed we can not only compete, we can win. And it's not about showing to ding-dongs like me sitting on their lazy boy watching the game. It is to themselves. And to themselves, they know that they are at least just as good or better than Las Vegas. And that's all you need to be right now. Worry about second round if it comes. And so when they take the ice Friday, sure, I think that in the beginning it's going to be electric and they're going to get an emotional boost about playing at home. I understand that. But at the same time, these guys on the other team, they're going to take the ice and they're going to hear all the noise and the smoke and all the bells and whistles that they have planned for the game and shirts on the back of the seats, whatever it might be. And that in turn jacks them up too, because they like to play in front of rowdy environments. In fact, you've heard many, and I know you literally have heard this, as we all have, that there's nothing more satisfying in terms of going and quieting the crowd, right? And so that gets you pumped up. So I think that sort of flushes each other out is what I'm trying to say, and it's a bit of a wash. The most important thing to me is looking in their eyes on the television and the way they played and the emotions that they were showing, that they've captured the flag in that way. They've climbed the hill. Now it's about who goes out, who plays, who takes advantage of breaks, because we know one went in off a skate. Great for the Mammoth. They were pressuring the goal, and they can take that opportunity to use that advantage. And then they scored, and the one dude, what was it? I call him Barbasol, but that's not his name.
Barbashev.
Yeah, he's within seconds. It's amazing to me how they can go, and then within seconds, one team scores, and the others just boom, and the momentum is just stalled. Well, don't have some turnovers. Don't give the opposition easier opportunities. I don't know that you really ever have an easy opportunity. I suppose you do sometimes, but don't give them easier opportunities based off of turnovers, and you get in a numbers game there where it's to your disadvantage. So that's the thing that I took from Game 2, is that I'm done with the inexperience. Now it's all about playing and who makes the plays.
The inexperience is an easy thing to point to at the start of the season. It's not a bad thing to point to, because we have seen times where it's really paid off. But I think a couple things have happened here in the first 2 games that, to your point, make that storyline not an important storyline in this series. Maybe in some other series, maybe for some other teams, but with these 2 teams in this series, a couple things jump out. One, the turnover, and like you say, it's 1-1. It doesn't seem like – how long is it going to take to get that next goal? And not only does the next one happen at 2-1, but then the Mammoth give it right back at 2-2. But it's Sergachev. It wasn't an inexperienced guy who gave the puck away. It's a guy who won 2 cups before he came to Utah. So experience isn't the storyline on that goal. And to grab the momentum and then to give it right back like that so quick, that was a big storyline in that game. And then I think the other thing is Cooley's 21. He's about to turn 22. Gunther was 22 for most of the season, but he just had his birthday a couple weeks ago, so he's 23 now. These are the guys we're talking about who are talented but young and inexperienced. Well, Gunther scored, and Cooley scored in both games.
Yeah.
So the young, inexperienced guys, they are delivering. They're not experienced anymore. Cooley scored twice, and he had another move in the first game that just the stick handle, the puck handle, just unreal, beating multiple defenders, and then he just couldn't beat the goaltender at the end. But I mean, he can do this. And I think Vegas knows he can do it. That's why we're all lip reading, I'm going to bleep and kill you. And that you have to say that because he scares you and you're trying to intimidate him and bully him. And he wouldn't be bullied. He scored. Nobody beat him up. Nobody killed him. They did trip him, I guess, for a penalty. But he scored the game-winning goal with 6 minutes left. So I think the thing that's on display, and this goes hand-in-hand with the experience, Vegas is experienced, but they're also older. And who's younger and faster and more athletic? Late in that game, the Mammoth were just blowing past the Golden Knights. And the odd man rushes, the transition moments, the fast breaks for you basketball fans. The speed was on full display there. Who's the faster team? It's the Mammoth. Yeah, maybe some of that's tied into the youth, and you just take the inexperience with it. So what? You're blowing by guys.
I think that for Cooley, it is totally Cooley to be Cooley right now. And they know it. I know it. I know they know it. They know I know it in terms of quality. Now, it's out there. He is a great hockey player, whether he's 21 or 31. The fact that he's 21 is super Cooley because then that means that he should have some great times ahead, as should the team. And the Bill Armstrong's talked about how this team right now may not necessarily be built to win it all. Their best teams are forthcoming, right? And that's out of, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. The thing about that is we're not talking about down the line right now. This team right now, today, when they take the ice on Friday, is built to win Game 3, and it's built to win the first-round series against the Golden Knights. That's what matters. That's in the moment. I fully believe that. I believe that they put the team together, and that was the stated goal to get to the playoff. Well, the next stated goal was to win the first round. So here we are, and they're right where they need to be. Obviously, where they want to be is 2-0, but they don't necessarily need to be there at that point. They need to be here. And here they are with this Golden Knight opportunity.
Oh.
Look at you go.
And they have this golden Friday night opportunity. See, I am willing. There's a lot of people over there on the other side on the round ball that don't really like me in that organization, but I'm willing to help market it, right? And golden Friday night opportunity. I'm giving you that and run with it. That's what you have to be able to do that. And, if they win, and I like the interviews they were doing is that, okay, we've won Game 2. That's all that is. That's all you did is win Game 2. You certainly didn't win the series, and I don't really care about ice advantage and all that stuff. I want to have play advantage, not venue advantage, because that can only carry you so far. And the same thing on the flip side. If I'm Vegas, I'm not sweating bullets over here by any stretch. I mean, they expected a close series, and so far that looks like what we're going to get, which for me, that's what I want as a fan. I want to turn on the TV not knowing what's going to happen, and that's going to keep me enthralled. I'm not going to be bored because I don't know what's going to happen, and anything can happen. In my mind, and I don't know what the odds are by any stretch, I don't care, but it's not a long shot that either team wins. So for the Mammoth, do what you can do, play a little bit better, because I think as the series progresses, you're probably going to have to play better. But the most important thing I took from Game 2 is individually, talking about Cooley, using him as the example, this guy believes that right now I'm at the top of my game. And then collectively, these guys are not starting, but definitely believing in themselves that they could win.
That whole home court, home field, home ice advantage thing, we talk about it in every sport, but I think statistically over time, the two sports where it matters the least are hockey and baseball. Other sports, you can see a little bit of a baked-in advantage to the home team. But I think when you get to hockey and baseball, just not that big a factor. There's so many other things that are more important.
Yeah.
I think it's just the math. You don't want to be down 2-0 and have to win 4 out of 5. That's the math you're trying to avoid.
I understand that, and I buy that because that becomes overwhelming. It's just that I am so hesitant to bring in anything about home court, home ice, because I don't want my guys or my gals even thinking about that.
Yeah,
I want them thinking about
yeah.
the focus is playing to the utmost of your ability level on that particular, whether it's game 3, game 4, whatever game it might be, rather than, we're home. Because you cannot let up whatsoever. You let up, and you'll get beat 5-1.
Yes. And I think that what we've seen in this series, what it really comes down to, and if the Mammoth has learned anything, and it, I guess you know it, but it's different to actually do it and feel it and experience it. But this should be a close series and a long series. We heard that from other people, not just local homers here. Other people are like, it looks kind of close. It looks like a long series. And they are close games. And so really, you can play really well for a long period of time, but that third period, so much is going to ride on it. And look at these first 2 games. The Mammoth are up 2-1, but they give up 2 goals, and they give up the third with the empty netter. But those first 2 goals, they lost the third period, so they lost the game. This game's 2-2. They did stuff right. They did stuff wrong. It's 2-2 going to third. You got to win the third period. They won the third period, so they won the game. So their ability to get focused at a higher level and compete at a higher level, and Cooley in his postgame was talking about how awesome it is, and it is different. And now he knows it because he's done it, and he loves it, and he's apparently pretty good at it right away, judging by what he's done in the first 2 games. But now when they go out on the ice, I think they've got to think that. Like, it's going to be a slugfest. It'll probably be close going to third, and we got to win the third period. And if they keep winning the third period, they're going to win this series. You might win the third period and still lose a game. You might dig yourself enough of a hole. But I think on the whole, it's going to be close. It's going to come right down to the end. These next games, whether there's 3, 4, 5 of them, I think they're going to look a lot like the first 2. I'm going to be real surprised if we're sitting here watching and breaking down 4-1 and 6-1 games when we get back in here. It just doesn't seem like this is how it's built. I think Vegas knows they're slower. They were doing the graphics and showing how they had 3 guys on the blue line. They're basically just clogging it up. It's no different than we've been sitting here talking about the Jazz and teams that have come in and clogged up the paint for years. Well, they're clogging up the ice in the blue line because if they get in space, the Mammoth are just skating past them.
Yeah. I also believe that it put a little bit of doubt into Vegas's mind. This is literally their first loss since the coaching change, right?
Right.
And so now
10 games in.
Right.
They had an overtime loss, but it's the first time they've been beaten in the regulation 60 minutes.
And what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean, oh my gosh, we're up against it. It could mean, hey, we're up against it. We got to step up our game.
Yeah.
And it could mean that. And that could be a little bit of a refresher for them. That's what I'm saying is I really don't know. I can't handicap and say I've got a feel for this, I've got a feel for that. Not that I'm a hockey expert by any stretch, but having watched both games in their entirety and obviously watched the Mammoth the entire season to a good extent, that I'm not sure which way to go. How is it going to play out? Which means it's basically a 50-50 toss-up type of game, or series for that matter. So who is going to make the plays? And the reason why I say I'm over the inexperience, I'm more about the talent. And talent, I think, is going to be the deciding factor. And limiting mistakes, I think sports to a degree, Majerus always used to talk about that. Basketball is a game of mistakes, and the team that has fewer mistakes is probably going to win. So don't allow some stupid stuff that makes it hard, especially in this sport, especially in the playoffs, where points, or in this case goals, are hard to come by, and it has to be a similar intense focus the whole time. And because of the fact that they have these various lines, you should be able to focus for that relatively short span of time. That's why it makes it so fun to be able to turn on the TV come Friday night to see what's going to happen and then go from there. And I do think, I agree with you, the team that wins a 2-1 has a 2-1 advantage, clearly has that advantage. It's not necessarily where the game is played. It's the fact that, hey, I only need to win 2 more, you need to win 3 more, and then so on as the series goes.
When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.
This year, experience the NHL playoffs your way. Want to watch a single? Do or die Game 7, a full week of heavy-hitting back-and-forth series. Then check out Sling's 1, 3, and 7-day passes. Watch the Chase for the Cup on ESPN and TNT, starting as low as $4.99. No long-term contracts or overpaying. Just live hockey at home or when you want it. Sling lets you do that. Visit sling.com to learn more.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.